The smell of chamomile used to calm me. That evening, it made my stomach twist. I was sitting by the kitchen window, watching rain smear down the glass. The light outside was fading, that blue hour where everything looks softer than it is. I stirred my tea, listening to the spoon scrape the porcelain. It sounded too loud in the quiet. Rebecca smiled at me from across the table. "Drink up, Mom," she said sweetly. "You've had a long day." Mom. She started calling me that after her wedding to my son, Michael, 6 months ago. At first, it made me happy, the idea of family growing instead of shrinking. But tonight, it felt rehearsed. I lifted the cup and took a sip. The taste was wrong, not bitter, not spoiled, just wrong. A faint metallic note that didn't belong in chamomile. I set it down. "Did you use a new brand?" Her smile didn't falter. "Oh, maybe I grabbed one from your pantry." The rain tapped harder against the window. It sounded like a warning. "My name is Alina Mitchell. I'm 60 years old, widow of 35 years. I spent most of my adult life balancing budgets and spreadsheets for other people, until I retired 2 years ago with enough savings to finally exhale. I live alone in a quiet condo building in Portland, 2 blocks from the river. It's not grand, but it's mine. My name is on every document, every key, every wall I painted myself. Michael visits on weekends, or he used to. When he met Rebecca, things changed fast. She's charming, 20 years younger than him, and works in real estate. She dresses in beige and speaks in affirmations. "Family is everything. We're a team. Let me take care of you." The first time I met her, she brought flowers and a pie she baked. It was store-bought. The tag was still on the box. Still, I smiled. You do that as a mother, you hope charm means kindness. Now, sitting across from her, watching the tea steam curl between us, I felt something off that I couldn't name yet. She reached for my hand. Her fingers were soft, cool. "You've done so much for everyone, Alina. Don't you ever get tired of doing it alone?" I smiled faintly. "Sometimes." "You should let us help," she said. "You don't have to worry about bills or home repairs anymore. Michael and I were talking, maybe it's time to simplify things, consolidate." That word, consolidate. I'd used it 100 times in finance meetings. It meant one person takes control so the rest stop asking questions. I withdrew my hand gently. "I appreciate the offer, Rebecca, but I like managing my own things." She tilted her head, eyes kind but cold. "Of course, I just worry you seem so scattered lately." I blinked. "Scattered?" She gave a little shrug. "You forgot the restaurant name last week, remember, when we met for brunch?" I hadn't forgotten. I'd chosen to go somewhere quieter. I looked at her tea untouched in front of her. Steam still rose from mine. "I'll be fine," I said. "Of course," she said again, too quickly, too brightly. The smile didn't reach her eyes. That night, I didn't finish my tea. I poured it down the sink when she wasn't looking. It left a pale yellow stain on the porcelain, sticky, faintly sweet. After she left, I rinsed the cup twice. Then I made a fresh one from my own tin. The taste was clean again. The difference was impossible to ignore. The next morning, I found a small envelope under my door. Rebecca's handwriting, neat, looping, perfect. "Alina, I took the liberty of organizing your bills. I noticed your utility payment was late again. I can automate it for you if you'd like. Love, Rebecca." My bills weren't late, they never were. I checked my online account. Every one of them was paid on time, as always. Still, my hands trembled when I folded the note, not from anger, from recognition. This wasn't help. It was groundwork. That week, small things kept shifting around my apartment. My jewelry box moved an inch on the dresser. My checkbook wasn't where I left it. A framed photo of my late husband was turned slightly toward the wall. When I mentioned it to Michael over dinner, he frowned. "Mom, you've always been particular. Maybe you just misplace things." "I don't misplace things," I said quietly. Rebecca touched his arm, smiling. "She's just under stress. Transitions are hard at this age." "At this age." It landed heavy. Michael didn't notice the way my jaw tightened. He was too busy checking his phone, the same phone that I would later learn Rebecca used to send messages in my name. But that was still to come. The first real crack appeared 2 nights later. I came home from my evening walk and found my front door slightly open. Just a sliver, enough to make the hallway light fall across the rug inside. My heart stumbled in my chest. "Hello," I called. Silence. Then, faintly, the sound of water running. I stepped inside, every sense on edge. The air smelled like lavender and something sharp, nail polish remover. From the bathroom came a soft hum. A woman's voice. Rebecca. The humming stopped. She appeared in the doorway holding my silver necklace. My necklace. Oh, Aliner, she laughed, startled but not ashamed. You scared me. I came by to tidy up your medicine cabinet. You left it unlocked. What are you doing with that? She looked down, feigned surprise. This, I was just admiring it. It's beautiful. I reached for it. It's mine. She handed it over, her fingers brushing mine, cool again, deliberate. Of course, I was just saying how nice it would look with that blue sweater you wore last week. Something inside me hardened then. Not anger, awareness. She wasn't being careless. She was testing boundaries. And I'd just shown her where mine were. That night I called my friend Joanna, who used to work in real estate law. She's grooming you, Joanna said flatly. Don't sign anything, don't let her near your paperwork. I haven't, I said, but Michael. Joanna sighed. He's blinded, happens all the time. Pretty face, confident voice, and suddenly he's defending her before you finish a sentence. I looked at the photo of Michael on my desk, his smile, his father's eyes. He thinks I'm losing track of things. Then start writing everything down, she said. Dates, times, what she says, protect yourself. I promised I would. After we hung up, I opened a new notebook. On the first line, I wrote, May 11, Rebecca in my condo without permission, necklace incident. The ink bled slightly on the paper. I liked the permanence of it. Days passed. Rebecca became sweeter. She brought flowers, chocolates, endless apologies. I just want to make things easier for you, Mom. She started bringing groceries, all labeled with new brands, tea bags, sugar, cereal. Everything organic, everything pre-opened. I stopped using them quietly, bought my own replacements. Sometimes I caught her watching me drink tea with too much interest. One morning she suggested, why don't you let us manage your accounts just while you rest? Grace Turner, is she your lawyer? We can draft something simple. Temporary guardianship, maybe. Guardianship. She smiled. It's just a formality. You've been so forgetful lately. I worry. I laughed once sharp. You worry about my memory. She reached out like she was comforting a child. Everyone needs help, Aliner. It's nothing to be ashamed of. That word, ashamed, landed deep. I'd spent years building a career, paying off debt, living carefully after my husband died. And now, this woman I barely knew was speaking to me like I was already half gone. That evening, I made another note. May 17, Rebecca brought guardianship form, says lawyer can help, declined, feeling dizzy after tea. The dizziness had become familiar. It lasted about an hour each time, a slow, cloudy fog in my head, as if someone had turned down the brightness of the world. But when I skipped the tea, the fog didn't come. That was when I started saving samples. A teaspoon of sugar in a plastic bag, a bit of brewed tea in a jar labeled with the date. Proof in case I needed it. The night it all began to unravel, I found my kitchen light on at 3 a.m. From the hallway, I saw movement, a shadow crossing the tile. My heart pounded. I picked up my phone and recorded silently from the doorway. Rebecca stood by the counter, her hair pulled back, her face expressionless. She was photographing my mail, my insurance statements, my deed copies. Then she walked to the cupboard and poured powder into the sugar jar. I gasped before I could stop myself. She froze, turned. Aliner. I stepped into the light. What are you doing here? Her eyes widened, then softened, almost pitying. You called me, remember? You said you couldn't sleep. I didn't call you. She smiled sadly. You did, you must have forgotten. The words chilled me more than the night air. She walked past me gently, hand brushing my arm. Get some rest, Mom, I'll lock up. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood in the kitchen, shaking, staring at the half-empty sugar jar. For the first time in months, I didn't feel old. I felt awake. I went to my drawer, took out my phone, and called Grace Turner, my lawyer. It was nearly 4 a.m. Her groggy voice came through the line. Aliner, what happened? She's drugging me, I whispered, and I can prove it. The words tasted like steel on my tongue. The next morning, Grace called back with a calm I didn't yet have. Don't confront her again, she said. We'll install cameras, quietly. I nodded, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles hurt. Grace added, if she's doing what you think, we'll catch her, but you need to stay steady. Steady. It sounded simple. but I hadn't felt steady since the first time that tea turned metallic. That night after the installers left, I sat at my table again, staring at the sugar jar. The cameras were small, hidden in the smoke detector in the lamp by the hallway. The lens caught the reflection of the kitchen light, a quiet witness waiting for morning. The tea beside me was untouched. The smell was sweet again, like it should be. Still, I didn't drink it. Because now I knew what I was really tasting. Danger disguised as kindness. The next morning, a soft knock echoed at my door. Rebecca's voice floated through, "Mom, you awake?" I stayed still, watching the camera's red light blink once. "Yes," I said, "come in." She stepped inside, smiling. "I brought breakfast." Her hand rested on the sugar jar. "Mind if I make tea?" The air seemed to pause. "Please," I said, smiling back. I wanted her to feel comfortable. I wanted her to feel safe. Because soon she wouldn't bay. And when she lifted that jar to pour, I pressed record. I didn't start by doubting her. Doubt came in small pieces, like sugar grains on a counter you can't quite wipe away. 2 months before the tea turned wrong, Rebecca first stepped into my condo alone. Michael was parking, she said, rolling her eyes, laughing at him like they were already a secret team. The hallway smelled like rain and lemon cleaner. She noticed my framed photo of Thomas, my late husband, and angled it toward the light. "Handsome," she said, "you must miss him." Her voice was warm but quick, trained to find the soft places. "I do," I said. She set the flowers she brought on the table, peonies, the kind that bruise if you breathe on them. "Let's set a tone," she said. "Open windows, open hearts." She talked while moving, sliding my mail into a neater stack, aligning the salt and pepper, pushing my coaster an inch, then pulling it back. I watched her hands, slim, pale, a tiny scar by the thumb like a white comma. "Michael says you're brilliant with money. Flattery first, then the hook. Do you use a budgeting app? I could help you set one up. We could link accounts so I can keep an eye on things when you're busy." "No," I said lightly, "I prefer pens." She laughed like we were sharing a joke. "Retro cute." I didn't tell her that my pen was a steel Waterman Thomas gave me when we moved into our first apartment, the one I used to close budgets and open futures. I didn't tell her the pen felt like armor. She spotted my sugar jar then. "Ceramic," she said, tapping the lid with a fingernail. "Ting, charming." She lifted the lid, sniffed, smiled. "Real sugar, you're not afraid of sweetness." Michael came in then, shaking water from his jacket. He kissed the top of my head like he used to when he was little and rushed to Rebecca's side without thinking. "Everything okay?" he asked her. "Perfect," she said, eyes on me, smiling. "We're bonding." From the stove, a faint scorch smell rose, the kind that lingers even after you scrub. I opened a window, cool air slid in like relief. Rebecca's gaze followed my keys on the hook by the door. "Cute key tags," she said, color-coded. "For the bike room, the mailbox, the back gate," I said. "Smart, so organized." Her pupils were steady, curious. She wasn't admiring my system. She was mapping it. Flashback moved forward a few weeks, the rehearsal dinner. The restaurant was loud, all candles and chatter, perfume hanging in the air like fog. Rebecca's friends wore beige like a uniform, their laughter shined. She pulled me aside near the bathrooms, where the tile was cold and smelled like grapefruit cleaner. "I need a tiny favor," she said, pressing a manila folder into my hands. "What is it?" "A gift letter," she said breezily. "The mortgage people wanted proof of support for our future home. It's just language, says you plan to contribute at some point. Not now, someday." "Says who?" I asked. She smiled. "Everyone does this. It can even be for love, doesn't have to be cash." I opened the folder. The paper inside felt slick, expensive. "To whom it may concern, I, Alina Mitchell, intend to gift my son and his wife $150,000 toward the purchase of their primary residence." My stomach went cold. "Rebecca, I didn't agree to this." Rebecca's look didn't change, pity layered over patience. "Of course not, Mom, it's just an intention. It helps us qualify, we probably won't even use it." "Then you don't need my signature." She stepped closer, the din of the dining room muffled like we were underwater. "You love Michael," she said softly. "Why make this hard?" "He has a good job," I said. "You know how markets are," she said. "You, of all people, know leverage matters." Her hand was on my elbow, cool. The bathroom door opened, and a whoosh of air carried the smell of hairspray and truffle oil between us. Michael called from the table, laughing at something I couldn't hear. I looked at him, then at her, then back at the number on the page. "No," I said, folding the letter and sliding it back into the folder. "Not tonight, not like this." She held my eyes a heartbeat too long. Then she smiled, wide enough to show relief she didn't feel. "Of course," she said, "another time." At the table, she leaned into Michael and whispered something. He glanced at me like I'd dropped a glass on the floor. I took a sip of water to calm the sudden dryness in my mouth. It tasted faintly of copper. When dessert came, Rebecca lifted her glass. "To family," she said, looking straight at me, "to teamwork." The room applauded. The spoon in my hand shook against the china, tapping like a nervous metronome. That was the first time I realized she never asked without a stage nearby. 2 mornings after the wedding, a knock came. When I opened the door, Rebecca stood there with a basket: bread, jam, tea, sugar. "Housewarming," she chirped. "I know you've lived here for years, but now we're family." The hallway smelled like new paint and brewed coffee. She swept in like she owned the air. "I can put these away," she said, toes already pointed toward my kitchen. She moved easily as if she'd practiced this house. Maybe she had. In the kitchen, she set the basket down and studied the shelves. "You like things neat," she said. "I do too." Her phone vibrated, she didn't pick up. She flipped it, screen down, on my counter like a small claim on surface. "Let me help," she said. "You rest." She reached for the sugar jar again. Her nails were painted a color so pale it looked like memory. I watched. "Alina," she said, turning, voice all light. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You look flushed," she said. "Maybe sit down." The kettle began to whisper. Steam rose in white ribbons, the window glass fogged. She dropped a tea bag into my favorite cup, white porcelain, hairline crack I will never part with, and smiled like a portrait in a magazine. "I'll make this perfect," she said, hand hovering above the jar. My hands were steady, even if my breath was. "Sweet enough already," I said, taking the jar and setting it on the top shelf. Her mouth made a small shape. A pause. A recalculation. "Okay," she said, easy again. "Honey then." Honey was in the pantry, labeled sealed mine. She didn't touch it. She smiled instead, turned off the kettle and put the cup away untouched. "I'll come by later," she said near the door. "Don't forget your vitamins." When she left, the room kept her. Perfume like clean linen. A thread of disapproval like a draft under the door. I stood still a while, listening to my pulse in my ears. Then I moved the sugar jar again, not because I was paranoid, but because I had been taught. Second flashback, the meeting with Grace. 3 weeks before the tea. Grace Turner's office smelled like paper and pine cleaner. She wore a navy dress and a look that made people tell the truth. "You said you feel pushed," she said, pen ready but not urgent. "Pushed how?" "Like I'm being softened," I said. "Like everything is being explained to me by someone younger in a voice you use on a tired child." "Examples." "Gift letter," I said. "Uninvited entry, little corrections about the way I put things away." "Passwords," Grace asked. "She asked," I said. "I declined." "Bank accounts." "She suggested visibility," I said. "I suggested boundaries." Grace's mouth tilted. "Good." I told her about the peonies, the folder near the bathroom, the way my photo of Thomas kept turning on the dresser as if a wind lived inside my room. She took notes in short blocks. Her pen made soft scratches on the paper. "No show, just record." "Here, what's next?" she said. "You'll document everything. Dates, times, exact words. You'll keep your own tea, your own sugar, your own routines. And if you're open to it, we install cameras, not to invite conflict, to tell the truth later." I looked at my hands. The skin on them is thin now, veined and honest. I turned my wedding band with my thumb and felt determined. "I don't want to trap her," I said. "I want to trap the lie she's telling." Grace nodded once, crisp. "Then we let her talk to the camera the way she talks to you," she said. Her phone buzzed, she glanced at it. "Also," she added, voice even, "my paralegal pulled a civil record on Rebecca's name. Not criminal. A complaint in Bend 2 years ago, settled without admission." "For what?" My mouth felt dry. "Unauthorized account access." She paused. Her former employer alleged she logged into a client portal after leaving the firm. She works in real estate, I said. Client portal could be anything. Grace's brows barely moved. It could also be a power rehearsal. The air in the room cooled. The pine cleaner scent sharpened, a note of winter in June. Do you think she married my son for money? I hated how small my voice sounded. I think she married your son, Grace said, steady, and she sees you as inventory. Inventory. I had been many things. Someone's inventory was not one I'd planned for. On my way out, I passed the waiting room fern and the faint smell of copier toner. Grace called after me, one more thing. I turned. If she says you're forgetting, she said, ask her to repeat what you said, not what she heard. I wrote that down the moment I reached the elevator. In my notebook, repeat what I said, not what you heard. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft sigh. When they opened, I wasn't younger, but I was sharper. Last flashback, a smaller one, but it stayed. Michael and I in my kitchen, the day after their honeymoon. He stood by the fridge, reading a text he didn't want me to see. His shirt smelled like airport air and hotel soap. Mom, he said, looking up at last, Rebecca worries you're lonely. I'm not, I said, I'm alone. He smiled like I'd made a joke. She can be intense, it's because she cares. Caring doesn't move things on my desk, I said. He frowned, you think she's trying to control you. I think she's practicing. He rubbed the back of his neck. He looked tired, loving someone often looks like that early. I wish you'd give her a chance. I did, I said, she took it. He blew out a breath, you always think the worst. I always write the facts, I said softly. My notebook sat on the table. He glanced at it. His eyes tightened. Are you keeping a diary of us? A ledger, I said, of me. He laughed once, like the sound you make when you disagree with a sign on a highway you can't stop to read. Don't make everything a spreadsheet. I won't, I said, I'll make it a boundary. He kissed my cheek, already halfway gone. I love you, he said. I love you more than this, I said. He didn't ask what this meant. He didn't want to know. When he left, the room held the scent of his aftershave and the echo of his new life closing around him like a jacket. I looked at my sugar jar. I moved it again. Back in the now, Grace's civil record printout lay under my notebook. And a new memory rose, one I hadn't wanted, a wedding toast I had tried to forget. Rebecca's maid of honor had said, voice bright, glass high. To Rebecca, who always finds a way to streamline life. Streamline, a pretty word for shove. I poured that word into my notebook too. Then I flipped to a blank page and wrote 3 lines. She compliments, then narrows. She organizes, then owns. She helps, then asks. When my pen stopped, my hand felt warm. I smelled chamomile even though there was no tea on the table. I opened the cabinet and checked the camera light hidden behind the flour canister. Steady, waiting. I touched the sugar jar last. The ceramic was cool, innocent. Some objects don't know what they've been used for. People do. My phone buzzed. A text from Grace, lab can test liquids, save yesterday's tea, courier at 8 a.m. I labeled the jar in my neat print, the way I used to label project files. Tea, 6:18 morning, offered by Rebecca. I set it next to my pen. Steel, ceramic paper. Armored trap record. The rain eased outside. The condo hummed pipes, fridge, safe walls. I breathed in slow, and I remembered Grace's last sentence in that first meeting, the one she said without writing it down. Predators call power care a leaner. The word care tasted like the wrong tea now. I capped my pen and slid the notebook under the lamp where the camera could see it. Because if she came back, I wanted the lens to read the words with me. The doorbell rang at dawn the next day. Too early for courtesy. Right on time for theft. Mom, Rebecca called sugar-sweet. We brought movers to help you declutter. The pounding on my door started before sunrise. 3 sharp knocks, then a pause, then 2 more impatient, almost angry. Alina, it's us. Rebecca's voice. Too bright for the hour. Too sweet for the situation. Behind her tone, I heard wheels scraping metal against tile, the unmistakable rattle of a dolly. I glanced at the clock, 5:47 a.m. Through the peephole, the hallway light caught a blur of beige trench coat, red nails, a clipboard, and a man in uniform pants pushing a moving crate. I hit record on my phone before unlocking the latch. "What are you doing here?" Rebecca smiled as if this was a friendly surprise. "Morning, Mom, we're helping you declutter. Movers gave us a great deal if we started early." Her eyes darted over my shoulder, scanning the apartment like she was already dividing it into sellable parts. "You didn't ask," I said. She waved the clipboard. "Michael and I agreed last night he's bringing coffee." Behind her, two men in branded shirts, Quick Move Storage, stood waiting with empty boxes. My heart thudded in my ears. "You can't come in." She gave a soft laugh. "Oh, sweetie, it's your home, but we're just helping. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The word sweetie slid across my nerves like glass. Then she stepped closer. "You said last week you wanted to simplify. I'm taking initiative." "I said I'd think about it," I replied. She tilted her head, voice dropping. "You've been confused lately. I'm just trying to keep things safe for you." There it was again, that false concern, practiced and poisonous. I took one small step back, keeping my phone angled so the camera saw her face. "Rebecca, if you cross this line, it's trespassing." The smile cracked. "I have your son's permission." "I didn't give mine." Her jaw twitched. "Please move away from my door." "Mom." I said no. For a second, I thought she might actually listen. Then she lifted her chin, turned to the movers, and said, "She's having another episode. Just start with the guest room." I reached for the door, but the men had already stepped forward, boxes in hand. Inside, chaos bloomed fast. Rebecca strode to the living room, flicking on lights. "We'll pack everything that's not essential." I stood there, frozen, pulse thudding. Her perfume, clean linen, and honey filled the air like suffocation. One mover pulled open the cabinet. Another began stacking my framed photos on the table. The camera and the smoke detector blinked. Every second of this was being captured. I stepped between them. "Put that down." The man looked uncertain. "Ma'am," she said. "She doesn't live here," I snapped. "Leave now." He hesitated, looked to Rebecca. "Don't mind her," she said quickly. "She's been under stress, her lawyer's handling it." "Lawyer," I repeated. She smiled sweetly. "Yes, your lawyer, Grace, right? She told me you needed help." My breath caught. "Grace never said that." Rebecca shrugged. "Maybe you forgot." That word again. Forgot. I was shaking now, not from fear, from fury. I crossed to the phone, dialed 911. Rebecca's voice sharpened. "Really? You're calling the police on your family?" "Yes." "Michael's going to be so embarrassed when they tell him you've lost it." "Good," I said, "then he'll know what you're really doing." The dispatcher's voice was calm. "Ma'am, are they still in your home?" "Yes." "Do you know them?" "My daughter-in-law and two movers she hired." "Are they armed?" "No, just boxes and lies." The dispatcher hesitated, then said softly, "Stay on the line. Officers are on the way." Rebecca paced behind me, voice sugary again. "You don't have to do this, we can talk." "I told you to leave." "Michael will be so upset." "He can call me later when you're in custody." For the first time, her face dropped its mask. "Custody." I nodded. "Everything you've done has been recorded." Her eyes flicked to the ceiling, to the smoke detector camera light she hadn't noticed before. The realization hit her in stages. Her pupils dilated, her lips parted. "You recorded me." "Yes," I said, "every visit." The movers froze. One whispered, "Ma'am, we're not part of this." "Then leave," I said. They did fast. Rebecca turned back to me, face pale now, words stumbling. You can't, this is entrapment." "No," I said, voice steady now, "this is evidence." The police arrived within minutes, sirens briefly flaring, then cutting off at the curb. Two officers stepped inside. Rebecca launched into her performance instantly. "She's confused, she invited us, then she forgot, she's been struggling, officer." The older cop nodded politely, then turned to me. "Ma'am, is this your home?" "Yes," I handed him my ID, "and I didn't invite them." The younger officer pointed to the camera in the corner. "That recording live." "Yes," I said, "my attorney has access." Rebecca's face drained of color. "Ma'am," the officer said to her, "step outside, please." She hesitated. "I'm family." He repeated, "Outside." She went. Michael arrived 10 minutes later, disheveled, eyes wide. "Mom, what's going on?" Rebecca ran to him, sobbing. She called the police on me, she's losing it, Michael. I stood there, arms folded, my phone still recording. Check the cameras, I said quietly, then tell me who's losing what. Mom, please, he said, exasperated. You've been paranoid. The officer interrupted. Sir, your wife entered this home without permission. Movers confirmed she initiated it. She wouldn't. She did, I said, and she's been drugging me. He froze. What? Tests are being done. Grace has the samples. Rebecca's face twisted, fear and rage in equal measure. She's lying. The older officer held up a hand. That's for the lab to decide. You'll both need to come down for statements. As they led her away, she glanced back at me. The sweetness was gone. Her voice was a hiss. You'll regret this, Alina. I already did, I said. She didn't respond. The hallway light flickered over her hair as she disappeared behind the elevator doors. The silence that followed was thick, like the air after thunder. Michael stayed behind, packing. You didn't have to humiliate her. She humiliated herself, I said. She's my wife. And I'm your mother, I said. Which one of us do you think has more to lose? He looked torn, like the ground had shifted under both of us. I saw the tea, Michael, I said softly. I saw what she put in it. He shook his head. You're misunderstanding, she wouldn't. Then wait for the lab, I said. Wait for proof. He left without another word. Grace arrived that afternoon. Her presence calmed me, steady, grounded, like a lighthouse in fog. She set her laptop on the table, plugged in a small drive, and opened the footage. There it was, Rebecca's hand twisting the jar lid, the powder falling in a slow white arc into my tea. The timestamp blinked. The audio picked up her whisper. A little more and she'll sign anything. Grace didn't react immediately, she just hit pause. The image froze, Rebecca mid-pour, her face half turned toward the camera, unaware of her undoing. Then Grace said, We'll have the lab rush the report. Don't leave the apartment tonight. I won't. She looked at me, then really looked. Are you okay? I'm not sure, I said. It's strange how relief and betrayal can taste the same. That night, I couldn't sleep. The apartment felt heavy with the residue of her presence, her perfume, her words, the faint mark her hand left on my sugar jar. I sat in the dark, watching the red camera light blink steadily. When the phone rang, I jumped. Grace again, lab rushed results, positive for benzodiazepines. I closed my eyes, she really did it. Yes, Grace said, and that means it's not just theft or trespassing anymore, it's attempted poisoning. I swallowed hard. What happens next? She'll be arrested tonight. The police have the footage and the report. Stay home, I'll handle the rest. I hung up and stood very still. Outside, rain began again, soft, rhythmic like a heartbeat. I walked to the kitchen and stared at the jar one last time. Then I took a piece of tape and wrote on it in block letters. Evidence, do not touch. The letters looked too neat for the mess beneath them. Then finally, I poured myself a fresh cup of tea from my own unopened tin. The smell was pure chamomile again. No bitterness, no metal. It tasted like peace, cautious, temporary, but mine. The next morning, the phone buzzed again. A text from Grace. Rebecca in custody. Police confirmed footage plus toxicology will call soon. Proud of you, Alina. I set the phone down and stared at the empty hallway where she had once stood smiling, sugar jar in hand. It was quiet now. Almost too quiet. Then the intercom crackled. Ms. Mitchell. It was Mr. Carter, the superintendent. His voice trembled slightly. There's someone from the press downstairs asking about your daughter-in-law. Should I send them away? I exhaled slowly. Yes, I said, send them away. But inside, another question formed, sharp and cold. If Rebecca was in custody, who left the lights on in my hallway just now? The bulb outside my door flickered twice, once, twice, and stayed dim. A shape passed across the narrow strip of light under the door. Then silence. I froze, cup halfway to my lips. The chamomile steam trembled against the rim. The intercom had gone quiet after Mr. Carter's call. No one should be out there. I set the cup down, heart pounding, every beat heavy and deliberate. Who's there? No answer. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Then a low male voice said, Ms. Mitchell, it's Carter. Relief hit first, then doubt. He sounded off, voice flatter, slower, like someone imitating him. I glanced at the peephole. No one, just a sliver of the empty hallway light. The building was old. You could hear everything through those walls, the elevator cables, the pipes breathing. But this was different. Then the sound of keys. A slow metallic rattle against the lock. Not Carter. I pressed record on my phone again. Whoever you are, I'm calling the police. The rattling stopped. Then retreating footsteps. I waited 1 minute, then two. Nothing. When I finally opened the door a crack, the hallway was empty except for a small folded paper on the mat. I bent down, picked it up. My hands shook as I opened it. 3 words scrawled in thick blue ink. We warned you. Grace arrived within 20 minutes, her hair still damp from the rain. She scanned the hallway, then the note, then me. Someone still thinks they can intimidate you, she said. Rebecca in custody. She is, Grace said carefully, but her circle is, we've requested extra patrols and I'll have the building supervisor change your lock. Now. Mr. Carter came up shortly after, the real one this time. His keys jingled, familiar and nervous. Ms. Mitchell, someone used to copy, he said, your old set. From the realtor's folder, I said quietly. Rebecca must have made duplicates when she moved things around. Carter nodded. We'll replace the entire cylinder. Grace folded her arms. Good, meanwhile you stay at my guest house tonight. I'm not leaving my home, I said. Grace looked at me for a long second, then nodded once. Then I'll stay here with you. That was Grace, precise, firm, and never dramatic. She set her laptop on my counter, typed fast. I'm pulling the latest footage from last night. If that shadow came close, we'll know. We watched together. At 2:07 a.m., the camera caught a tall figure in a baseball cap walking down the hall. Not Rebecca, too broad, heavier build. He stopped outside my door, bent, tried the lock. Then, for just a moment, turned toward the camera. The image was grainy, but I knew that face. Michael, I whispered. Grace paused the footage. You're sure? I nodded slowly. He has that scar on his chin from falling off his bike at 10. Grace frowned. Could be old footage. No, I said, that's the same jacket he wore yesterday. She leaned back, exhaling. Then he's involved deeper than we thought. The words hit like cold water. My son. My only child. He'd always been easy to sway, eager to please. But to try to open my door at night, after everything. Grace's voice broke through my thoughts. He might have been looking for something. If Rebecca told him the police missed evidence, he could have believed her. Or, I said quietly, he doesn't believe she's guilty. Grace didn't answer. The rain outside thickened, tapping hard against the glass. Every sound in that apartment felt amplified, the hum of the fridge, the creak of old wood, the echo of betrayal. At 7:30 a.m., a knock came. Louder this time. I went to the door. Grace stood behind me, ready. Mom, Michael's voice. My chest tightened. What do you want? To talk. About what? Please. Grace gave a small nod, letting me decide. I opened the door 2 inches, chain still latched. He looked tired, unshaven. His eyes, his father's eyes, wouldn't meet mine. Rebecca, saying you framed her, he said. She says you've been confused for months. I almost laughed, then asked the police about the lab results. She says you spiked the samples. Michael, I said softly, do you really think I'd poison myself to prove a point? He rubbed his temple. I don't know what to think anymore. Grace stepped forward. Mr. Mitchell, your wife's facing multiple charges backed by lab evidence and footage. I suggest you let the investigation conclude before repeating her claims. Michael glared. You're her lawyer, of course you'd say that. Grace's tone stayed calm. I'm an officer of the court. Evidence doesn't care about loyalty. He turned back to me. Why would she do this, Mom? She loves me. Because she loves control, I said, and she's losing it. His eyes flickered. He wanted to argue, but doubt was finally creeping in. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down, frowned, and stepped back. I have to go, he said. I'll call later. When the elevator doors closed, Grace whispered, he's conflicted, but we'll need him soon to testify. The next day, Detective Shaw called. We've reviewed your footage, he said. Your son entered the building last night but left after 2 minutes. We're not pressing charges yet, but he's on the report. Do you think she sent him? I asked. We can't prove it yet, but her phone logs show a call from the holding cell to an unknown number, probably him. He paused. You need to know something else. Rebecca's bail hearing is tomorrow. Her attorney's arguing medical sympathy says she's under emotional distress from your accusations. I clenched my jaw. She tried to poison me. Yes, ma'am, we'll oppose it, but the judge will want clear psychiatric evidence that you're competent, so her side can't claim otherwise. Grace was already nodding. We've scheduled that. Dr. Hayes will see a leaner this afternoon. Dr. Jonathan Hayes's office smelled like fresh linen and peppermint. He was calm, patient, the kind of man who could read a heartbeat through silence. He asked about my sleep, my appetite, my memory. He asked what day it was, the current president, and to recall 3 objects from the table: a pen, a clock, a paperclip. Then he said gently, "You seem remarkably aware for someone accused of cognitive decline." "I've been drinking tainted tea," I said. "If that makes me forgetful, I'll take it as proof." He smiled faintly. "You'll get through this." Before I left, he added, "If they try to portray you as delusional, remember, confidence isn't aggression. Speak clearly, facts only." I nodded. Facts are all I have left. That night, Grace and I reviewed the footage again. This time, we noticed something new, something small but damning. When Rebecca poured the powder into my tea, her phone was propped on the counter. Its reflection in the stainless steel kettle showed her screen. She wasn't just acting alone. She was on a call. Zooming in, we saw the faintest flicker, the outline of a contact name. Michael. Grace's jaw tightened. That's conspiracy. I stared at the frozen frame, my son's name glowing like a bruise on the image. The tea had been meant to break my mind. The phone call had been meant to erase my proof. "Send it to Detective Shaw," I said. The next morning, the courthouse buzzed like a hive. Reporters clustered outside, shouting questions. "Ms. Mitchell, is it true your daughter-in-law claims you're unstable? Do you regret pressing charges? Is this about money?" Grace guided me through, silent and steady. Inside, the judge reviewed the evidence. Rebecca sat across the room, pale, elegant, expressionless. Michael sat behind her, not meeting my eyes. Grace presented the footage. The whisper, the powder, the timestamp. The reflection of his name on the phone screen. The courtroom went still. The judge leaned forward. "Is that Mr. Mitchell's name?" "Yes, Your Honor," Grace said. "We verified the call log. It matches the time of the recording." Rebecca's lawyer stammered something about misinterpretation, but the damage was done. Rebecca's composure cracked. "Michael, I was protecting us," she hissed. He turned red. "Protecting us from what?" "From her controlling everything, you said." He stood abruptly, face pale. "Stop, just stop." The judge banged the gavel. "Enough." Rebecca's bail was denied. As deputies led her out, she twisted once, eyes locking on me. "You'll die alone, Elinor." I met her stare, better alone than owned. Outside the courthouse, Michael waited by the steps. He didn't speak at first. Finally, he said, "She told me you were slipping, that you forgot to pay bills, that you left the stove on." "I didn't." "I know," he said quietly. "I checked." He rubbed his eyes. "She made me believe you needed help, that guardianship was for your safety. God, Mom, I'm sorry." I wanted to comfort him, to say something maternal and gentle. But truth has its own rhythm, and this moment wasn't for softness. "She didn't just lie to you," I said. "She used you." He nodded. "I see that now." "Do you?" He met my eyes, and for the first time I saw clarity where confusion had been. "Yes." I exhaled slowly. "Then help me finish this." That night, the apartment was quiet again. I brewed one last cup of tea, untouched by anyone else's hands. As I sat by the window, rain starting again, my phone buzzed. Grace's text. Toxicology confirmed. Benzodiazepine concentration enough to cause cognitive impairment. Arrest warrant expanded to include conspiracy. Court date set, you did it. I smiled, small, tired, but real. Then I saw the reflection of my own face in the window glass, older, lined, but steady. I thought of the note, the false concern, the shaking cups of tea. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. The next morning, Michael called. "Mom," he said, "they want me to testify. I'll tell the truth." I closed my eyes. "Then we'll both heal from this the same way, with honesty." He hesitated. "She's blaming me." "She'll blame whoever's left to listen," I said. "Don't be one of them." He didn't answer, but I heard the quiet sound of him exhaling, the sound of letting go. The trial would be weeks away. But justice had already begun. Because the truth wasn't just in the footage or the lab results. It was in the quiet moments no one could fake, the steady voice that says, I know what you did and I'm still standing. The envelope lay like a wound against the gray of my welcome mat. No knock this time. Just the sound of rain and that single slip of paper waiting to be opened. My name was written in blue ink, Elinor's not mom. That alone told me everything. I carried it inside, careful not to smudge the ink, my heart already moving faster than my body. The edges of the envelope were damp, softened by rain. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Rebecca had poured poison into my tea, and slid my finger under the flap. The letter inside was short. 5 lines, no greeting. They're saying I knew everything. I didn't, I swear I didn't. I'm meeting with her lawyer tomorrow to make a statement. She says she has proof that you edited the video. Please don't go to court until I talk to you. Michael. I read it twice, then 3 times. My tea went cold beside me. I wanted to believe him that he was trapped, confused, manipulated. But those words her lawyer sat like stones in my gut. Rebecca's hands were in everything, even from jail. Grace arrived an hour later. I handed her the letter. Her expression didn't change much. She read quietly, then folded it in half. We'll need to keep this. He's scared, I said. He's being managed, she corrected. She's probably trying to make you look unstable before the hearing. She's in jail, I said. Grace shook her head. Phones, visitors, lawyers, manipulation doesn't need open doors. I sighed, rubbing my temples. He said she has proof the video was edited. Grace snorted softly. Of course she did, it's the oldest play, attack the evidence. Her phone buzzed, she glanced down, speak of the devil. It was Detective Shaw. Grace put him on speaker. Elinor, Shaw said, we had a small situation this morning. I froze, what kind of situation? He hesitated. A break-in at the evidence locker. The hard drive containing your camera backups was removed. My stomach dropped as stolen. Yes, but we still have cloud copies, he added quickly. Rebecca's lawyer doesn't know that. I looked at Grace. Her jaw was tight. Who had access? Building custodian and one off-site contractor were reviewing footage. Do you think she ordered it? I asked. She doesn't have direct communication privileges, Shaw said, but someone visited her yesterday, a man matching your son's description. My breath caught. Grace's eyes met mine. I'll handle it, she said firmly. Don't you call him, don't you react, that's exactly what she wants. But the next day, I couldn't stop myself. I dialed his number. Straight to voicemail. Then half an hour later, a message buzzed through. Don't believe everything you hear. I'm trying to protect both of us. Both of us. The phrase echoed like a bruise. I saved the message, forwarded it to Grace, and sat back, staring at the clock. The steady tick of the hands was the only sound in the room. I had never felt my age more clearly. 60 years of discipline, patience, and the terrible awareness that love could blind you faster than poison. That evening, the doorbell rang again. Not the light tap of courtesy, the long, steady buzz of someone who won't stop. Through the peephole, Detective Shaw. He stepped in, rain still clinging to his coat. Ms. Mitchell, I wanted to bring this personally. He handed me a sealed envelope stamped State Forensics Unit. The toxicology report came back with a certified chain of custody. This copy can't be contested in court. I opened it slowly. Benzodiazepine presence confirmed. Estimated dosage, moderate to high. Source, beverage sample provided by victim. I ran my finger down the printed page. Seeing it in black and white felt surreal, as if science had finally caught up to instinct. Shaw's tone softened. You were right all along. I wish I wasn't, I said quietly. He looked around the apartment, still keeping the cameras on. Always. Good, he said. Rebecca's lawyer filed a motion to question your competency again. The DA's countering with Dr. Hayes' evaluation. We'll need you in court tomorrow morning for verification. Grace had warned me, but hearing it made my chest tighten. Competency. The word still stung. Shaw must have seen the look on my face. This isn't about you, ma'am, it's strategy. They're trying to make noise so we forget what matters. I won't let them, I said. He smiled faintly, didn't think you would. After he left, I poured myself another cup of tea, not chamomile this time, just plain black, strong enough to burn the back of my throat. The steam fogged my glasses. My hands trembled as I held the cup. On the counter, my phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. Still trust your lawyer, ask her about the settlement file she hid from you. My heart lurched. I read it again. Then again. Grace. No, impossible. I scrolled through the number history, blocked anonymous. Classic tactic, sow confusion, divide alliances. Still, the message sat there glowing. I picked up the phone and called Grace. She answered on the second ring, "You okay?" "I got a message," I said. "It said you hid something." Silence. Then they're desperate, ignore it. I've never hidden anything from you. I wanted to believe her, and I did mostly. But the seed had been planted. "Tomorrow," she said, "you'll walk in with that report and Dr. Hayes' statement. We'll shut this down for good." The courthouse smelled of rain-soaked paper and old wood polish. Reporters lined the steps again. Inside, the defense was already spinning. Rebecca's lawyer stood before the judge, tone soft, sympathetic. "Your Honor, our client maintains she was acting under emotional distress, believing her mother-in-law was in danger due to cognitive decline. She has new evidence suggesting the recordings were altered by the plaintiff's attorney, Ms. Grace Turner." Gasps from the gallery. Grace stayed perfectly still. The judge turned, "Ms. Turner, response." Grace stood poised. "Your Honor, this is a fabrication. We have metadata and third-party verification confirming authenticity. And as of this morning, the state forensics report verified contamination of Ms. Mitchell's tea. The defense is attempting misdirection." She passed the document forward. The judge skimmed it, frowned, then nodded. "Motion denied, proceed." Rebecca's face tightened. Michael sat behind her, staring at his hands. Grace turned to me briefly, eyes steady. I exhaled for what felt like the first time that day. When the court adjourned for lunch, I stepped outside for air. Michael followed me. "Mom," he said quietly, "she's saying I'll go to jail if I testify." "Why?" "She told her lawyer I helped hide the drugs, said I brought her the pills from a pharmacy under your name." I felt dizzy. "That's a lie." "I know." "Then prove it." He hesitated. "If I testify, I lose everything, my job, my name." I looked at him hard. "You already lost your integrity, what else is left?" His eyes filled. "I didn't mean for this to go so far." "Neither did I said. We stood there in the rain, both silent. Somewhere deep down, I knew this conversation was our reckoning and our beginning. He finally whispered, "I'll do it." The next day, his testimony shifted everything. He admitted he'd followed Rebecca's instructions, that she'd told him I was unsafe, that the drugs were mild sedatives meant to calm me. He said she'd assured him the guardianship was temporary, just until I recovered. When the DA showed him the footage of her on the phone during the poisoning, he broke down. "She said she loved me," he whispered, "but she loved control more." His voice cracked on the word control. I felt both grief and relief in that sound. After court, a medic approached me in the hallway. "Ms. Mitchell, you should sit." "I'm fine," I said automatically. He shook his head. "You're pale, you've been through trauma." The smell of antiseptic hit me, sharp and clean. A memory flickered, Rebecca's gloved hands in my bathroom. Bottles moved slightly on the shelf. "I'm fine," I repeated. But when I stood, my vision swam. Grace caught me under the arm. "Hospital," she said firmly. The ER was bright, humming, alive with the beeping rhythm of machines. They hooked me up to an IV, checked my blood pressure, drew more samples just to confirm residual levels. The nurse's voice was kind but brisk. "You're lucky. A few more weeks of that dose and you'd have been unconscious most of the day." Lucky. I lay there under the harsh fluorescent light, the sheets smelling of starch and sanitizer, and thought of how small luck looked beside survival. Grace sat beside me, scrolling through her phone. "They've set sentencing for next month," she said. 8 years minimum, maybe more." 8 years, I murmured, "and I get the rest of my life." "Exactly." Later, a man in a white coat entered, Dr. Hayes again. He smiled warmly. "I heard about the verdict, congratulations." "Thank you," I said weakly. He tapped the clipboard. "Your labs are clear, you're officially toxin-free." I almost laughed. Good, maybe now I'll sleep. He smiled. You'll do more than that, you'll live. That night, Grace drove me home. The city was quiet, lights blurring through the car window. When we pulled into my building, I hesitated. The condo was dark, familiar, and full of ghosts. You don't have to go in alone, she said. I do, I said softly. I need to. She nodded and handed me the new keys, my name engraved on the tag. Inside, everything was still. I stood in the doorway, breathing in the faint scent of lemon polish. This was my space again. Mine. I walked to the kitchen, opened the cupboard, and looked at the new jar of sugar. Sealed, untouched. I smiled faintly. The house was quiet but not empty. It was filled with proof and peace and possibility. Then my phone buzzed one last time. Unknown numbers. Thank you for telling the truth. I'll make things right, whatever it takes. Michael. I whispered into the silence, so will I. When the warden's number flashed on my phone, I almost didn't answer. For 3 days, I'd been rebuilding the quiet, watering plants, folding laundry, pretending normal was still possible. But old habits die hard. And danger doesn't always knock, sometimes it calls politely first. Mrs. Mitchell, the voice was brisk, official. This is Warden Price at Multnomah County Correctional. We had a situation this morning. My fingers tightened around the phone. What kind of situation? An inmate escaped during transport. A pause. The inmate was Rebecca Collins. For a second, everything inside me went silent. No heartbeat, no breath, just static. How? I managed. Van stopped for a medical transfer. Collins faked a seizure, overpowered the officer with the help of another inmate. She's still at large. The walls of my condo seemed to close in. You're telling me she's out there? Yes, ma'am, but the marshals are on it. We've posted units near your area. I want her nowhere near me, I said. My voice didn't shake, it was too tired to. I understand. Keep your doors locked and don't open for anyone except uniformed officers. The call ended, leaving the air heavy. Outside, a garbage truck clanged down the street. Normal life continued, absurd and loud. Grace arrived 15 minutes later, trench coat still dripping. They confirmed it, she said. The U.S. Marshals are leading the search. Don't panic, she doesn't have access to your building or your car or your accounts. Grace, she's escaped from jail. She's already proven what she's capable of. I know, she said quietly, but she'll go underground. People like her always think they can rebuild control from the shadows. I rubbed my temples, and if she comes here, then she'll be arrested twice as fast. You're not alone this time. She reached across the table, covering my hand. We've both seen women like her. They can manipulate the system, but not forever. Still, that night I slept with the lights on. By morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. News alerts, text messages, a voicemail from Detective Shaw. Stay calm, Alina. We've traced her to a motel outside Salem. She used a stolen card under an alias, Rebecca Collins MICHLL. The sound of my own name attached to hers made my stomach twist. We've sent officers. You'll be contacted for verification soon. If she reaches out, don't engage. I put the phone down and leaned against the counter. Rebecca Collins Mitchell. Even in flight, she couldn't resist the power of my name. Around noon, I heard a knock. Sharp 2 beats. Then silence. I froze, phone in hand. Who is it? A man's voice, delivery. I didn't order anything. No, ma'am, this was prepaid, just need a signature. My throat tightened, leave it outside. A pause. Then the sound of retreating footsteps. I waited, then peeked through the peephole. No one, just a box on the floor, plain, unmarked, tied with string. I didn't touch it. I called Grace. Within half an hour, Detective Shaw and his partner were there, gloves on, cameras out. They opened it carefully. Inside, a single item. My old teacup, the one from the poisoning. Klein, empty. And a note taped inside it. You drink alone now, R. That night, police cars parked outside my building. Lights off, engines idling. I watched from the window, heart steady but cold. Grace stayed until midnight, reviewing security footage, taking calls. At one point she said, "You know what this means, right?" She's not done. No, Grace said, but she's desperate. Desperation makes people sloppy. She closed her laptop. They'll find her, Alina, you've already won. I shook my head. Winning doesn't feel like this. Grace smiled sadly. That's because victory rarely looks peaceful, it looks like survival. 3 days later, Rebecca was found, cornered at a bus depot outside Eugene, trying to board with a fake ID. She didn't resist arrest. According to the marshals, she laughed when they cuffed her. She said you'd miss her, one officer told me later, that she made your life exciting again. I just said she doesn't know what peace looks like. The following weeks blurred into hearings, paperwork, and the slow process of untangling the damage she'd done. Grace handled most of it. Michael handled the rest. He came by often now, apologetic, quiet, older. He fixed my mailbox, changed light bulbs, mowed the small patch of grass by the parking lot like he used to when he was a teenager. One evening, as we sat in the kitchen, he asked, "How do you still look at me without hating me?" "I don't hate you," I said. "I hate what you believed." He nodded. "I believed her because she made me feel useful." "She did that to everyone," I said softly. "It's what predators do, they start with your best traits." He swallowed hard. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I reached across the table, just like Grace had done for me weeks earlier, and squeezed his hand. "Then start by forgiving yourself, I already have." He blinked fast, looked away. "You don't make things easy, Mom." "Life didn't make me easy," I said. "I adapted." Rebecca's final hearing came 6 months later. The courtroom was smaller this time, no reporters, no chaos, just truth stripped bare. She looked thinner, her once perfect hair now dull, but her eyes, those bright, manipulative eyes, still searched for control. She didn't find it. The judge read her sentence: 8 years for attempted poisoning, theft, and forgery, plus 2 for escape. When asked if she wanted to speak, she stood. Her voice was calm, almost bored. "I never meant to hurt anyone, I was helping her manage her life." The judge stared down at her. "You nearly ended it." Rebecca just smiled faintly, then turned toward me. Her lips moved soundlessly, but I read them easily. "You'll always think of me." I didn't look away. I just said, loud enough for the bailiff to hear, "Not anymore." Afterwards, Michael and I went for a walk by the river. The air smelled of wet pine and early spring. "She's gone for good," he said quietly. I nodded, "But what she took from us isn't gone, it's just changed shape." He looked at me. "What do you mean?" "Trust," I said. "It doesn't vanish, it just gets rebuilt differently, smaller, stronger." He smiled faintly. "Guess I'll start with that." We walked in silence after that, the sound of water steady beside us. Months passed. Life began to settle into something ordinary again: groceries, phone calls, morning walks. But the past never leaves cleanly. It lingers, subtle as dust. Sometimes when I made tea, I'd catch myself sniffing the cup before I poured. Old instincts, protective ones. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and listen for footsteps in the hall that weren't there. And sometimes when I looked at Michael, I'd see flashes of the frightened man who thought love was loyalty, even when it meant blindness. But healing isn't a straight road. It's a circle that gets wider each time you walk it. One afternoon, Grace called. "We've finalized the restitution order. You'll receive compensation for damages." "I don't need money," I said. "I know," she said, "but it's justice and closure." Closure, a word that sounds clean but feels heavy. After the call, I sat in the garden behind my condo, lavender blooming, wind soft against my hair, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not for Rebecca, not for what I'd lost, but for the version of me that once believed danger always announced itself. That night, Michael brought dinner. We ate quietly: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, just like the meals I used to make when he was small. When he left, he hugged me longer than usual. "You're the strongest person I know," he said. I smiled. "No, Michael, I just stopped pretending weakness keeps peace." He laughed softly. "Same thing." When the door closed behind him, the apartment was quiet again, but no longer lonely. Later, before bed, I checked the lock twice, as always. Then I turned off the light, letting the room fall into gentle dark. In the stillness, I whispered a kind of prayer, not to forgive her, but to forgive myself for waiting so long to fight back. Because survival, I realized, isn't just breathing after the storm. It's learning to live without flinching at thunder. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 2 full days before I opened it. It was cream-colored, thick, and smelled faintly of soap, the kind they give inmates who want to feel human. Her handwriting was the same as always, slanted, precise, a little vain. To Mrs. Alina Mitchell. From Rebecca Collins. Do not discard. I'd thought about throwing it in the trash. Grace had told me to. Closure doesn't require communication, she'd said. But curiosity has its own gravity. And after months of courtrooms and testimony, I wanted to see if guilt ever learned to write. So I slit the top with a butter knife and unfolded the letter. Alina, I know you think you've won, you haven't. The truth is, I saved you. You were drowning in loneliness, and now everyone finally sees you again, even your son. They call me manipulative, maybe, but everything I did, I learned from you, the way you control, the way you make people obey through kindness. You taught me that control looks a lot like care. You're welcome, Lord. My stomach turned. There it was, the same poison, just written instead of poured. No apology, no remorse. Just projection in cursive. I folded it neatly, placed it in a plastic sleeve, and filed it under evidence personal. Because forgiveness doesn't erase. It documents. A week later, I met with Grace one last time. Her office was brighter now, the spring sunlight spilling across stacks of paper. You sure you're ready to close the file? She asked. I'm sure. She smiled. Then it's official, the case is done, restitution finalized, and Rebecca's appeal denied. She handed me a sealed folder. Inside was a check, a court order, and a photo of me the local paper had run under the headline. Widow EXBOSES family fraud wins back her life. I stared at it for a long time. My hair looked silver under the camera flash. I didn't look broken. I looked awake. Grace noticed, you're starting something new, aren't you? I nodded. A consulting group. Financial help for women like me, widows, retirees, anyone whose own family tells them they can't handle money. She grinned. Alina, that's perfect. Not revenge, I said, insurance. My life after the trial was quieter but not small. I moved to a new condo closer to the waterfront, bigger windows, more light. The smell of salt drifted through in the mornings. Every day at 9, I walked along the river with a notebook. Some mornings, I met with other women at the cafe, some older, some younger, all with stories that rhymed with mine. They spoke softly at first, embarrassed by the words control, gaslight, financial abuse. But soon, their voices grew stronger. Stories became strategies. Pain became paperwork. We built something out of survival. I called it Silver Line Consulting. Because sometimes the silver lining isn't comfort, it's clarity. One afternoon, Michael stopped by with groceries. He started therapy, joined a support group. He looked healthier, more present. He set the bags on the counter and said, "You've redecorated again." "Fresh walls, fresh life," I said. He smiled. "Do you ever think about her?" "Not often," I said truthfully, "but when I do, I remember what she taught me unintentionally." "What's that?" "That boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you lock for peace, not for spite." He nodded, thoughtful. "I've been reading about financial guardianship laws. You'd be surprised how many older parents get tricked." "I wouldn't," I said softly. He looked at me then, eyes full of something tender and ashamed. "I still can't believe I didn't see it sooner." "Forgiveness isn't blindness, Michael. It's choosing to see and still move forward." He exhaled slowly. "You sound like a teacher." "Maybe I am now." Months passed. Seasons changed. I planted herbs on my balcony, rosemary, mint, thyme. Every morning, I'd brush my fingers across them and let the scent remind me that I could still grow new things. Sometimes I'd catch myself checking the lock or rereading that letter just to remind myself what manipulation looked like in print. But fear no longer lived here. It had been evicted, one document at a time. Then one late summer afternoon, a letter arrived from the prison again. This time, it wasn't from Rebecca. It was from the inmate counselor. "Dear Mrs. Mitchell, we're required to inform you that Ms. Collins is participating in our rehabilitation writing program. She has listed you as her impact letter recipient. You are not obligated to read or respond. The letters will remain sealed unless you request them." I laughed out loud. The irony was almost too perfect. I wrote back one line. "No need to send the letters, I already lived them." In September, Silver Line Consulting hosted its first public workshop. 20 women showed up, most with trembling hands and cautious smiles. We met in a rented community hall with folding chairs and a coffee pot that hissed like an old radiator. But by the end of the night, people were laughing, swapping numbers, making plans. I looked around that small room at women once silenced, now talking about wills and power of attorney forms like they were weapons of peace, and I felt something I hadn't in years. Pride. Not in revenge. In resilience. Michael helped me close up after the event. He loaded chairs into the van, wiping sweat from his forehead. You did this, he said quietly. You turned pain into something that helps people. I smiled. It's how we survive, son. We repurpose the wreckage. He chuckled. You sound like a book. Maybe someday I'll write one, I said. He nodded, eyes glinting. You should call it the cost of kindness. I thought about that, how kindness, when unguarded, can become currency for control. And how reclaiming it might be the bravest thing of all. That night when I got home, the moon was high and the air cool. I made tea, strong, unsweetened black. The smell filled the kitchen. Safe, familiar. I carried my cup to the balcony, sat among the herbs, and listened to the city hum below. Distant sirens, laughter from a nearby park, the soft slap of water against the shore. For the first time in a long time, I felt no eyes watching me. No footsteps behind me. Just my heartbeat, steady and free. In the months that followed, Silver Line grew faster than I expected. Grace became my co-advisor, teaching women how to read legal fine print. Even Mr. Carter, the building superintendent who'd first noticed Rebecca snooping, volunteered to teach safety basics for seniors. And every so often, Detective Shaw dropped by our events. He'd stand in the back, coffee in hand, smiling at the sight of all these women refusing to be silenced. One evening he said, "You've become a bit of a legend, Ms. Mitchell." I laughed. Legends are just survivors with better stories. Still, there was one thing left undone. I hadn't visited my husband's grave in years, not since before Rebecca came into our lives. So one quiet Sunday I went. The cemetery smelled of wet grass and lilacs. I cleaned the headstone, replaced the wilted flowers with fresh white roses, and stood there a while. You'd probably laugh at all this, I said softly, at how your quiet, cautious wife turned into a courtroom headline. The wind stirred the trees, soft and approving. I'm okay now, I whispered, and I'm done saving people who want to sink me. A single leaf drifted down, landing on the stone. I let it stay. When I got home, Michael called. Dinner tomorrow, he asked. I'll cook. You cook now. He laughed. You inspire strange miracles. Then I'll be there, I said. And for once, I didn't feel the urge to double-check, to worry, to guard. Just to show up, present, peaceful, whole. Before bed, I wrote my nightly entry in the small leather journal I'd started months ago. A ritual of sorts, one truth a day. Tonight I wrote, survival isn't about outliving danger, it's about outgrowing it. Rebecca tried to make me small, fear tried to make me quiet, but I learned to take up space again, loudly, honestly, completely. And now I'm not afraid to be seen. I closed the notebook, turned off the lamp, and let darkness come gently this time. The house breathed around me, warm, safe, mine. When dawn came, the first light hit my window, soft and golden. The city outside began to stir. I made coffee instead of tea, opened the balcony door, and whispered to the morning air. I made it. And for the first time, it didn't feel like survival. It felt like living. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed silent to keep peace, or spoken up to protect yourself? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is reclaim your own name. And never let anyone write it for you again.